Welcome, comrades. Today we're going to talk about my personal definition of fascism using quotes by various people such as Georgy Dimitrov or Vladimir Lenin himself, because there was frequently somehow problems with defining fascism, even though they were characteristics which were the same throughout all the experiments with fascism. We could use quotes from Georgy Dimitrov first, which is the most simple but, well, not complete definition, which is the open terrorist dictatorship of the most reactionary, most chauvinistic, and most imperialist elements of finance capital. Or, as Césaire said, fascism is colonialism turned inward. Or, as Lenin himself said, fascism is capitalism in decay. Or, as Benjamin said, fascism is the aestheticization of politics. Even though that is correct, I see that many commentators have frequently rendered fascism as nothing more than varyingly abstract shades of a right-wing authoritarian principle or mass movements of racism and militarism. As much as those elements are included in fascist ideology, I agree. But from an early Leninist and left communist vantage point, the nature of fascism is in fact a historically defined capitalist mode of political economic existence that originates from within the plane of social contradictions, which bourgeois democracy is ultimately attempting to be structured to resolve, but it fails to do so terribly. Bourgeois democracy returns to fascism again and again as a tool to uphold capitalism in all scenarios. Essentially, you may think of fascism as the authoritarian corollary to crisis capitalism. Fascism emerges in epochs of advanced decay, when capitalism is locked into a profound systemic crisis, not able to successfully reproduce itself through capitalist competition, given conditions of overaccumulation and social polarization. The bourgeois state, in its role as manager of both the social order and capitalist reproduction, is placed in a position where it faces increased proletarian action and mass discontent among the populace that challenges the state's ruling legitimacy and governing powers. Amidst such historical moments, fascism appears, here as an authoritarian modality of governance, synonymous with the violent destruction of all class struggle and social dissent through a fusion or synthesis of the state with corporate elements for the purpose of structuring society from the top down. This is otherwise known as corporatism, the economic model of fascism. It mobilizes mythic narratives of national unity, racial or ethnic purity, and hierarchical order to justify its power while obfuscating the class struggles that anchor it. Its collectivism is a reaction. It seeks to subordinate society to capitalist interests alone, in which the autonomy of the individual and the autonomy of classes become enslaved thoroughly to the projects of social control by the state for the purposes of capital expansion. As such, fascism is a model of the capitalist recovery, outside the law and by means of violence, adjusting for some former insufficient of liberal bourgeois democracy and capitalism which it protects. It does not end class divisions and struggle. It intensifies and strengthens and reorders it under totalitarian control. for collectivist fascism is against what left communists support, which is embedded individualism. Left communism and early Leninism is severely anti-authoritarian collectivism. It is for democratic collectivism. Fascism imposes its authoritarian pseudo-collectivism by imposing unity via compulsion and strict top-down stratification, whilst left communism and early Leninism proposes an altogether contrasting conceptualization, being a free-rooted individuality within a collective. Embedded individualism insists on the fact that true individual freedom requires social forms such as voluntary association and self-managing democracy, ownership over the means of production and the instruments of governance, and mutual aid in order to be actualized. It opposes the pseudo-collectivism of fascism that atomizes us as individuals or dissolves our class interests into a mythical, undifferentiated ethnic construct which is the nation, as they call it. Rather, left communism prefers free association of all producers that is organized horizontally, where individual expression and social collective cooperation coexist without any one dominating the other. This principle is the antithesis to fascism's coercive social engineering and subordination of the working class to nationalist and corporatist ends. As fascism always includes nationalism and myth. Myth is a key part. Fascism uses nationalist myth as a weapon against any perception or even the tentative beginnings of a coalition forming between minority and majority classes to focus on class struggle and instead focus on xenophobia, militarism, and obedience directed back at authoritarian leadership. The nation is made into a mystical, suprapersonal organism requiring unqualified devotion to abort any working class organization or revolutionary movement. This has been seen among all experiments with fascism. First they came after the revolutionaries such as communists, anti-fascists generally, such as anarchists, or just any other form of progressive. Their ultimate aim has been to exercise thought control through various means over the proletariat in order to prevent their acquisition of class consciousness, perpetuated with proletarian revolutionary praxis by replacing proletarian solidarity and instead suppressing it with a sort of national mysticism, you may call it. Far from left communism's idea of doing away with the bourgeois state or complementing it with workers' councils or productive communes, fascism raises the state to an even higher power as a weapon for capitalist oppression of the working class. The state is subsumed in the process of direct fusion with corporate capital, transforming itself to function as a totalitarian machine for labor discipline, production control, military mobilization and service to global imperial capital ambitions, and other intentions of capital expansion for, well, personal interests. By blending exploitation into order and unity, this fusion robs democracy from all meaningful control over economic life and political life, and even social life, by the working class. Fascism is the opposite of socialist emancipation, for in the end, fascism stands in direct contrast to pretty much everything. But we could shorten it down and say, in the end, fascism stands in direct contrast to the socialist intention of liberation. It bars proletarian self-organization. It disempowers worker control over the means of production and self-governance. Part of this destruction or forced fusion, particularly in the working class sector, is the obliteration of any independent working class organizations or institutions, and the enforcement of strict social stratification by race, ethnicity, sex, gender, and class order. Left communism intimates that social humanity, or communism, aims at the spontaneously advancing goal of exiting a class and status society, for it replaces concurrently the withering away of the state with proletarian socialism, or at least the establishment of proletarian participation in working class organs, which make true political and economic social decisions, whilst building an entire realm on voluntary association, common ownership, and common labor. So fascism emerges from the context or is the result of systemic crises of capitalism via capitalist reaction and counter-revolution, and the failure of bourgeois democracy to manage or contain all class antagonisms, functioning to secure capitalist social relations by way of an authoritarian mythic collectivism and the integration of corporate power within the political body. It represses the autonomy of individual and class in the name of unity, national regeneration, and order. There's nothing of this in left communism. There's the lie that, fascism and socialism is essentially the same thing, but I hope I could explain that it is pretty much the opposite. Rather, the exact opposite is the case. For only authentic freedom and socialism grow out of organic individualism materialized by a free association on equal footing from below, ruled by self-responsibility and self-determination of the entirety of the working class. This emancipatory project, which is left communism or early Leninism, is opposed to all forms of domination, be it statist, capitalist, nationalist, or corporatist. It affirms the revolutionary creation of a society beyond capitalism, beyond classes, and beyond state bureaucracy. I hope I could explain it better now, and I hope you like this. So if there's any topics I should do next, just comment it below, either on Instagram or on YouTube, the Leninist Pro, you know my name. And comrades, till the next time.